Now, the tiny Ukrainian village of Froza in the Kharkiv region, people are still reeling from the shock after a missile strike in the region resulted in deaths of over 52 people. Now, this is the second such missile strike that has been carried out by Moscow, which Kiev says is simply inhuman. Russia unleashed a new airstrike on Ukraine, in which a 10-year-old boy and also his grandmother, reportedly in the northeastern city of Kharkiv, were killed. The reporters say that emergency crews pulled the body of the boy from underneath the rubble of the building.
На кімнаті на третьому поверсі було виявлено тіло загиблого хлопчика приблизно 10 років. Пошукові роботи продовжуються.
The early morning Russian attack also injured 28 more people, including an 11-month-old boy. And this is according to the regional governor, Ole Shinebov.
Suddenly a whistle and explosion. I just heard explosion. Felt the windows to burst, and all the glasses broken, everything. And I felt the wave, the sound and everything goes in the air. I felt also like that in the bed, but yeah, and that was it. Inside the hotel, everyone was fine. We tried to see if anyone needs help.
Now, the explosion resulted in a crater in the city street near an apartment building. Videos, in fact, showed debris and rubble littering the street as people were walking near the smoky ruins. Surrounding buildings were also blackened out by the blast, which shattered windows and damaged the parked cars.
Я со второго этажа, на меня все завалилось, с третьего. Все повылетали, и все окна, и все на свете. Меня спасатели по лестнице вытянули с окна. Все завалило. Я только успела, попросила хоть туфли надеть и сумку с документами взять.
Now, all of this happened just a day after a strike in the same region. It killed at least about 52 civilians in what has been dubbed as one of the deadliest attacks in the war in several months. Ukrainian officials have in fact described it as possibly the deadliest wartime attack on civilians in many months. And according to Kharkiv's regional governor, a cafe and a shop came under attack. Footage from the site in the immediate aftermath shows bodies strewn across the road. And rescue workers have walked through the rubble looking for any signs of life. The people around the area, in fact, looked dazed, shocked at the sheer brutality, as bodies lay alongside concrete and metal debris. Now, post the aftermath of the airstrikes, the Kremlin has said that the Russian military does not strike any civilian targets. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that the Russian strikes are targeted at Ukraine's military infrastructure as well as concentration of troops and the country's military leadership. By Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davies, who is a military expert and also a senior fellow for Defense Priorities. He's joining us live on this broadcast. Now, Mr. Davis, we've just, seen the horrific nature of this missile strike, which Ukraine claims was targeted at civilians in the Kharkiv region. And this is something new that's not happened in the last many months. Why do you think there has been a change? Is this an error on the part of the Russians, or is this something that has been deliberately done to try and target the civilians in Ukraine?
Yeah, when you try to make sense of a horrific attack like this in a combat zone, there's two things you have to keep in mind. First of all is that all warfare is based on deception. And the second thing is that all war is a horrible, brutish, catastrophic destruction of human life. And in this case, that what that means is it's possible that this happened exactly as Ukraine said, that it was just a sheer civilian target, had no military value, and it was just a brutal, murderous attack by Russia to try and make Ukraine cower in fear. That's possible, and we don't really have any idea to know anything different. However, it's also possible that what the Russian side said was true, is that there were there were Ukrainian troops or even NATO troops in a subterranean area below that, and that they went after that, and the civilians were killed as a result of that. Who knows which is true? The only thing we know for absolute certain is that all of these civilians were caught in the crossfire and were killed. It could also have been a mistake by Russia. They may have been targeting something else, or they may have had bad intelligence, because all of that happens also in war. And really, to underscore the problem is that it's hard to know in any time, especially from this far out, what actually happened, because the hard truth is that there are documented cases where sometimes Ukraine has put military infrastructure inside civilian areas, which were later attacked, and some were observed even by camera inexplicably or unintentionally by the Ukraine side. So there could be plausible on either side. But again, I just have to reiterate, the civilians in the middle of that were the victims of it, and their lives are snuffed out. And that's why this war should come to an end.
Absolutely, indeed. But before the war comes to an end, and the fact is, the leaders on both sides have their positions and they've dug in with their positions. But what is now being talked about is that the Ukrainian counteroffensive is running out of steam. In the last 4 months, Ukraine has been able to make very little progress. But now with the weather about to change and winter about to set in the next few weeks, the talk is that the Russians could be staging a winter offensive. What do you make of that?
Yeah, that's entirely possible. There was a little known or little observed interview on Sky News a couple of days ago with a member of the Ukrainian parliament, where they actually admitted that they had only captured less than 1% of the territory as a result of this 4 months of the counteroffensive. And look, the fact is they have used everything they had. It took 6 months to prepare for this. All of the ammunition, the weapons, the training, the intelligence support from the West to the Ukraine side, and it uniformly failed. And there is no valid basis upon which now to suggest that somehow in the spring of 24, which is what Ukraine's already talking about trying to gain new forces for, that would have any success beyond that. And as you point out, there is also at least some evidence to suggest that Russia has been waiting to weaken the Ukraine side in these defenses so that they can go on their own offensive in the winter. It remains to be seen whether that could happen, but it's certainly within the old Soviet doctrine is how they used to conduct forces. And that's something that Ukraine is going to have to contend with. But especially what's going on in the U.S. government these days, in the Congress, where the funding for Ukraine has been put in great jeopardy and already is delayed. It's unclear whether that's going to continue to happen, and that could have an even bigger impact on the battlefield.
Absolutely, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Daniel Davis, for joining us and putting us all that in perspective there.
Thank you.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.